sustansya, yung basic concept. Okay, so let's start with the objectives first. Ano nga ba ang objective? Bakit tayo nagka-conduct ng isang research study? According to Agnes Tandang, in 2019, there are 4 objectives of a research study, whether this is a quantitative or a qualitative research. No? Number 1 is to describe the characteristics of a population or a sample. Okay? Ano yung behavior ng sample? Ano yung kanilang satisfaction rating? Ano yung kanilang preparedness level? Ano yung kanilang um, those things, satisfaction, preparedness, those kinds of things are the ones that describes your population or your sample. Second, either we compare 2 or more groups or treatments. You know, we compare this particular group and then this particular group. Okay, so let's say, for example, we will be comparing the behavior of this particular religion from this particular religion on the on celebrating New Year. Let's say, for example, no, we can do that with research. We identify the degree of associations between or among variables. So this is exclusive for quantitative, no, identifying the degree of associations between or among variables. Okay, so let's say, for example, you have 2 variables, and then this variable goes up. What happens to the other variable? Does it go up as well? At what rate? Does it go down? At what rate? No? So those things can be your objective for your research, but identifying the degree of association is exclusive for quantitative research. And then also, we can identify the influence of a response variable. Let's say, for example, this particular variable influences the other variables. Anong gagamitin yan? Again, this is exclusive for quantitative research. No? We will be using linear regression or any other form of regression. So if this particular variable x influences the variable y, what happens? What is the extent of the influence? Until when yung influence ng isang variable sa isang variable? Those are the things that can be answered by this particular objective. So if you're writing your objectives for research, maybe you can choose from this. Okay? These are the main objectives of your research. Now, the main objectives of this research is to describe the characteristic of the sample or to compare 2 or more groups or treatments and so on. Okay? So those are your objectives. Next, quantitative research explained. Okay? So for quantitative research, it tries to explain certain phenomena by collecting and analyzing data using appropriate statistical methods. This is what I am always telling my clients and my students. Because if you have collected numerical data, let's say for example, nag-collect ka ng data, tapos tinreat mo siya as association at ikaw ay nag-Pearson. Inilagay mo sa software, tapos ang pinili mo ay Pearson. Will the software generate a result? Will the software create a conclusion for your data? The answer is yes. Kasi nalagay ka ng numero. Na inilagay mo. Okay? Let's say for example, you use p-test instead of Pearson. Will it generate a result? Will it still generate a result? The answer is yes. It will still generate a result. Okay? But the question is that statistical method appropriate? Kasi nga, if you will be collecting numerical data, you can actually explore the software, and the software will give you results kahit ano pang statistical method ang i-click mo sa kanya because you input numbers. Now the question is, appropriate ba yung ginamit ko? And this is what, hopefully, this is what we're trying to learn for this afternoon. Okay? So that's the first. We have to explain certain phenomena no, using appropriate statistical methods. Second, we have to learn randomization techniques. Although the sampling, nasa methods kasi ito, no, ng quantitative research, and it's not part of this webinar, but I'll try to insert no the thoughts or the objectives of randomization. Dapat random yung pagkakakuha mo ng sample mo. You did qualitative research in grade 11, correct? When you were in grade 11, you did qualitative research. Yes. Do you remember the sampling techniques that you used when you were in grade 11? Can you remember any sampling technique that you used? Stratified. Okay. Interesting. Purposive. Ayan. Purposive. No, what I'm pertaining is the sampling technique that you used for your research. Yung research na ginawa ninyo. What was the sampling that you used? So according to one, you used purposive sampling. But I do not remember. That's okay. We'll try to to refresh you with that later on. Sige. So sampling methods, no, there are two types. No, basically the first one is the probability sampling, and the second one is the non-probability sampling. So basically in quantitative research, we use the probability sampling because it's one of the requirements for us to do hypothesis testing. And the more complex statistical tests require randomization. Okay? For qualitative, normally, ang ginagamit nyo, ayan, yung mga purposive sampling, non-probability ang tawag dyan. No? Yung mga snowball, convenience sampling, and so on. Okay. Controlled variables. Okay. Now, this one, in quantitative research, there are manipulation. There are things that you can control. Let's say, for example, we want to know the growth of this plant. If this new fertilizer is, if it is treated with this new fertilizer. So what we'll be doing, what the scientists will be doing is they will be creating setups in a controlled environment. Pag sinabing controlled, ang pwede lang baguhin ay yung experimental variable nila, which is the fertilizer. Meaning, yung water is the same, yung sunlight is the same, yung temperature is the same, and so on. No? So in quantitative research, we can use to control variables. Okay, we can control them, and then quantitative research tells if there is difference or relationship, but does not tell you why. Okay, maaari nating malaman kung may relationship ba ang isang variable at isang variable, but we cannot explore the causations of it. Kasi yung causation na yon, that is intended for another research. Maaaring, it can be a qualitative research. It can be a mixture of both quantitative and qualitative research. Okay? But the relationship or the difference between the variables or among the variables may be explored. But the reason how did this difference came about? How did this relationship come about? Why is it happening? Sometimes in a single research, hindi na natin siya may explore. We cannot explore those things. No? If you want to explore those things, then you should conduct another research. All right, let's continue. If you have questions, by the way, students of CIIT, just post your questions because I'm actually reading the comments. So if you have questions as I am going with my lecture, just post it. And then hopefully Ma'am Nika can collect the questions, and then we can answer that later during the open forum. Okay, now here are some issues for the quantitative research. Number one, how large should my sample size be? Okay, say for example, I'm exploring the satisfaction rating of the 4Ps members with regards to the policies of the 4Ps and the implementation of the policies. Magkaiba yon, right? Magkaiba yung satisfaction mo sa policies na inilatag sa iyo kaysa dun sa pag-i-implement ng policies. So that's an exploratory research, no? We can explore on that. We can tell the difference. Magkaiba ba yung satisfaction rating ko on the policy that was laid to the members and the implementation of this policy? Okay? Now, let's say for example, you're exploring that. Gaano kadami? How many respondents should I collect? Or how many respondents should I consider? Okay? Pwede na ba yung 30? Pwede na ba yung 50? And so on. No? Sometimes your quantitative research would tell, okay na yung 30. Kasi tinuturo sa stats, kapag 30, pwede na siyang hypothesis testing. But that's wrong. Okay? Tinuturo yun sa, I don't know if you can remember. And mostly hindi lang to sa high school, hindi lang sa senior high school, hindi lang sa college, even in the graduate programs. Sinasabi ng mga stats na kapag 30, pwede na yung hypothesis testing. Or pwede ka nang mag-t-test or ANOVA for that. Or pwede ka nang mag-proceed sa research mo dahil meron ka ng 30 respondents. That's wrong. Saan ginagamit yung 30? The 30 is used for normality test only. Para lang malaman kung normal ba yung distribution ng iyong data. But it's not a go signal for you to continue your research with only 30 respondents. Are you getting my point? Do you remember the normality? The bell-shaped curve? Ayan, oo. The 30 respondents would give you a measure or an idea of the normality of your data. Kung pumapasok ba siya doon sa normal curve or meron ba siyang mga outliers and so on and so forth. Okay? But just because these 30 respondents or the 30 observations that you have collected tells you the normality, hindi siya yung magiging go signal. It's not the go signal for you to continue your research with only 30 respondents. Okay? Again, sampling for the respondents is under methodology, which is not a part of my lecture. No? May mga test dyan. I don't know if your statistics teacher taught you the Slavin's formula. Can you remember? Do you remember the Slavin's formula? Wait, I'll just drink coffee. Mukhang wala, no? So, kasi hindi na tinuturo talaga yung Slavin's formula. You remember the name. Okay. So right now, no, hindi na po siya ginagamit sa statistics, no? We're using proportion right now or the Cochrane's test. But this will not be a part of my lecture anymore, no? But in determining the sample size, we do not use the Slavin's formula anymore, but we use the Cochrane's test and the proportion. Okay? Second, is my measurement correct? Okay? Tama ba yung pagkaka-measure ko sa data ko? Okay? Malalaman natin yan later. Number 3, are the statistical tests appropriate? Kaya nga lang sinasabi ko kanina, maaari kayong makagamit ng napakadaming statistical tests, but if it's not appropriate, what are you giving to your respondent? What are you giving to your readers? What are you giving to the people who will be reading your research? What are you giving to the policymakers? If you use an inappropriate statistical test, what do you think you're giving to your readers and to the policymakers if your research is designed for creating policies and decision making? An unreliable data. Yes, that's correct. You're giving an unreliable data, a biased result. You will be giving false information. Basically, right? Pero tama rin yan, unreliable. Kasi pag false, unreliable siya. And maybe it's biased. Correct? So dapat talaga, ang malaman natin for today is ano yung appropriate na data na gagamitin ko for my study. And then, should I generalize or not? Dapat ba kung kukuha ako ng sample, i-generalize ko siya sa population? Kagaya ng example ko kanina, yung 1,200 ba, dapat ko na rin sabihin na yun na rin ang desisyon ng 15 million or 16 million from the 1,200 that I have collected? Should I generalize or not? Those are the things that we will be exploring later. Okay, next. There are limitations, of course, for quantitative research. Kaya nga nandyan si qualitative, no? Para saluhin yung limitation ni quanti. Okay, number one, data can be static. Okay? When you say static, it's just the same. Okay? Let's say, for example, ang kinukuha mo ay normal body temperature. Of course, in science, the normal body temperature is 37 degrees. Correct? 37.0 degrees. Tama po ba yun? May mga science major. May mga teacher ba tayo na science major dito? But anyway, so sa pure na mathematics, pag 37.1 degrees Celsius, that's not normal anymore. That's not the normal body temperature. But in stat, pwede pa rin yan. Hindi ba? Hindi 37 degrees Celsius? Pag 37? Hmm. So anyway, ang akala ko 37 is the normal. Anyway, so anyway, let's say for example 36.5 ang normal. Sige, sabihin natin na ano, for argument's sake or for discussion purposes, 36.5 ang normal body temperature. In pure mathematics, if it's 36.6, then that's not normal anymore. But in statistics, pwede pa rin yan. Okay? So anyway, next, sometimes causations are not explored. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. Maaari nating malaman kung merong relationship or differences, but the reasons for these differences and relationships might not be explored. Then some things cannot be measured or cannot be measured accurately. Ano yung mga bagay na hindi natin pwedeng i-measure accurately? Rating. Correct? For example, how would you rate the taste of the caramel macchiato in Starbucks? You cannot measure that actually accurately. No? For example, from 1 to 7 or 1 to 5. Pag nag-rate ka ng 4, that's not really the accurate measurement for that. Right? So there are things that cannot be measured actually accurately. No? So those are some limitations of your quantitative research. Now, how do we perform or how do we do a quantitative research? When it comes to methods, tatlo lamang ang steps. Okay? Number 1 is to construct a survey. Number 2 is to conduct the survey. And number 3, to analyze the survey. Okay? And then, but in reality, what we do is, number 1, we determine the purpose and the design of the study. After determining, of course, the problem at hand. Okay? Then we define and select questions, and then we decide upon the population and sample. Yung first, second, and third steps in the graduate school, we call this your topic proposal or your research proposal. Then after that, you will pretest the questionnaire to test the validity and reliability. And then you will conduct the survey, analyze the data, and then report the result. And then you will be deciding whether you will be generalizing from a sample to the population, or you will just be describing the sample that you have collected. Okay? Okay. Let's go now to the basic concepts of statistics. So first is the population and the sample. So kapag population, we're talking about the entirety. Okay? The entire pool from which a statistic sample is drawn. So a population may refer to an entire group of people, objects, events, or measurements. So first, your population should be defined when you propose a title, when you propose a topic. Okay? If your population is the grade 12 students of CIIT, then your population is the grade 12 students of CIIT. Okay? If your population under study is the engineering students of Quezon City, then that's your population. Okay? First and foremost, your population should be defined in your title. Kung yung population mo ba is just in one school, in one district, in one city, and so on. Or in one barangay even. Okay? Bakit kailangang defined ang iyong population? Why is there a need for the population under study to be defined? Any idea? Why do you think dapat focused or defined ang ating population under study? Well, basically, to measure the scope of the research, it's correct. So the readers will know your scope to make it more realistic. It's required in analyzing the data properly. That's also correct. And also, you will not astray when you are getting your sample. Kasi most of the time, hindi naman cover yung population in a quantitative research. Okay? But if your population under study is defined, yes, that's correct. You can never have a population of everyone. No? Parang, if your population under study is the entire grade 12 students of CIIT, hindi mo naman yan i-interviewin lahat. Hindi mo lahat yan papasagutin sa survey. That's why you draw a sample. Okay? Bakit hindi mo i-interviewin lahat? Sige nga. Pero pwede ba? Pwede bang interviewin lahat? Is that even possible? If you can, yes. That's possible. Pero kagaya nga ng sabi nila, no? Sean, Mac, I'll be calling you on your first names, ha? So that, we can be at ease with each other. Ayan, so these people, no, matagal, sinasabi the process is too long, it's hard to do that. Yes, that's the very reason. Napakahirap po. If there are 5,000 students, I have to interview 5,000? That would be ridiculous. Or that would be time consuming. Or I might not be able to finish my research in time if I will be interviewing all of them. Okay? So that's why we draw sample. And that's also the reason why your population should be defined so that you can know where to draw sample. Okay? Baka mamaya, ang population under study mo is the grade 12 CIIT students, and then ang in-interview mo ay mga grade 12 students ng TIP. Right? So that would also produce an unreliable data. Okay? Sige. Now, the sample now is the subset of your population. I think we already know that. No? Are we clear with population and sample? Can you send me a dot if it's clear? Okay, good. So we'll continue now. Okay. The next concepts are the variable, the observation, and the data. When we're talking about a variable, in mathematics, it is something that has an unknown value. Tama? In your general mathematics, sinabing variable, it is something from your algebra, grade 7 algebra. It is something that has an unknown value. Okay. In research, it is a characteristic of the elements in a collection that can assume different values. All right. So, ganun pa rin, no? It can assume different values. Okay? But it's a characteristic. Of the elements in a collection. Okay? So the observation now are the units on which we measure the data. So let's say, for example, you have one variable. And then you measure this variable. Let's say, for example, your variable is satisfaction level. Or your variable is academic performance. Okay? Now, the measurement of this variable is what we call an observation. Okay, let's say, for example, academic performance, tapos you are you are focused only on physics or in programming, let's say, then the grade, which is an academic performance, will be the observation of that variable. Let's say, for example, si Juan de la Cruz, no? You interviewed Juan de la Cruz, and then you found out that his programming grade is 98 dahil nahirapan siya sa programming. So, naka 98 lang siya. Okay? Then that 98 now is called an observation of the variable programming performance. Is that understood? Kapag observation, ito yung numero. Okay? And when we're pertaining to data, this is now the collection of your observations. So, say for example, you have Juan de la Cruz, Pedro Santa Maria, and all others. Pag kinolekta mo na, and you have a collection of observations, this is now what we call a data. Okay? Sige. Is that clear? We'll continue if it's clear. Again, if you have questions, if you have questions, just don't hesitate to post your questions. Ayan, they're pressing a that if it's a yes. You're adapting the Sir F's way. The students in TIP, they call me Sir F. You're adapting the Sir F's way of saying yes. Okay, because one that is just one character, no? It saves your energy of typing YES. All right. Okay. Now, this is the main part of our discussion for this afternoon. How do I choose the appropriate statistic? Okay? Statistic po ang tawag natin doon sa mga tests or sa mga result ng mga test na yon. Okay? Yung mga t-value, yung mga mean, yung mga standard deviation, they are called statistic. Okay? First, what do we need? What we need is to determine the research design. Ano-ano ba yung mga research design? The design or the method? Ito yung mga cohort. Sa qualitative, Ma'am Mika, what are the research designs? What are the methods? Cohort, case studies, yes. We have the phenomenology, yes. Ground theory, no? Those things are research designs, no? For qualitative research. For quantitative, we have the correlational design, we have the causal design, comparative design, experimental, quasi-experimental, and so on. Okay? We have to know the research design because this is where statistics start. Bakit po, Ma'am Mika? Anyway, yeah, so the statistics actually start with determining the research design because each research design corresponds to a particular statistical test. Okay, number 2. Can we go to the next slide, Ma'am Mika? Number 2 is the type of variables. O isa-isa lang muna. Okay. Ay, sige. Pinresent na ni ma'am. Okay lang yun, ma'am. Nakita na po nila. Alright. What are the two types? The quantitative and the qualitative variables. Okay. Ano yung quantitative variables? Grade 12. Can you share with me? What are quantitative variables in general? O sabi numbers. Tama naman yun, ano? Okay. Pero paano kung zip code? Zip code is a number, right? Let's say, for example, my zip code is 1125. Is that a quantitative variable? Ayan. Basically, it's a code. Yan, tama yun, no? It's a name, sabi nila. Okay. When do we identify now if a number is quantitative or not? It should be a measure. It can be measured. It must be quantifiable. It should represent something or someone. So measurable, yung inyong definition, no? Most of the students say quantifiable or measurable, no? That's also correct. Okay? And normally, o sige, ganito. Paano yung income? Is income quantitative? Or money, pera na lang. Is income quantitative? Of course, you'll send a dot if it's a yes. Yeah, that's the F's way. Okay, sige. Let's say, for example, your parent earns, one of the parents of the students here earns, let's say, 65,000 a month. That's quantitative. Do we all agree that it's quantitative? Yes. Quantitative yun. Kasi po, mineasure eh. Nami-measure yan from 0 to 65,000. Yan. Pero what if you collected in your study, na naka-bracket siya. For example, tinanong mo, magkano ang kinikita mo? How much do you earn in a month? Or what is your income in a month? Tapos nilagay mo, 10,000 to 15,000. 15,001 to 20,000. 20,001 to 25,000. 25,001 to 30,000. Excuse me. Is it still quantitative? It's a range, yes, but is it quantitative? Oh, many still says yes. Okay. Balikan natin yung question ko kanina ha. Kailan siya nagiging quantitative? When is a number quantitative? Okay? Sabi nyo kanina if it's measurable, if it is quantifiable, no? But in reality, it is quantitative if and only if you can perform operations. Like you fall under this range. Yes. So, can I perform, let's say for example, I checked the 10,000 to 15,000, 10,001 to 15,000. I checked that. And then another one checked the 25,001 to 30,000. Can I add their answers? No. Can I get the mean of their answers? That is a raw answer, remember ha? Hindi natin siya tinitreat as a frequency distribution. Okay? So basically, it's quantitative if and only if you can perform operation in that particular number. In reality, tama yung sinasabi nyo kanina, naging range na siya. Naging categorical na siya. Okay? So if you collected income on the basis of the range, then you cannot perform the t-test. You cannot perform ANOVA. You cannot perform Pearson. Because hindi na siya quantitative in nature. Malalaman natin yan mamaya, no? Okay. Sige. So, tama yung sinasabi nyo. So, I hope, nalinawan ko kung ano talaga yung quantitative variable. Okay ba yun? Tama. Are we clear with quantitative variable? Yun. May mga nagdadat. I'm so happy. Okay. Good. Now, let's go to qualitative variables. Pag qualitative naman, ano siya? If it's qualitative, it's descriptive in nature according to Lance. Not numerical, according to Andre. I would like to commend Ma'am Mika, your students, they're very participative. What else? Pag sinabing qualitative, what's words? Yan. Description, it can be a name, categories, and so on. Correct? Okay. Now, let's say for example, I gathered data for the variable sex. Sex can be male, female. Correct? Yun lang naman. Yun lang naman ang sex, right? Male and female. Yes. And then, because the statistical softwares, most statistical softwares only accept numbers, nilagyan ko ngayon ng code. Kinode ko siya na si female ay 0, tapos si male ay 1. Okay? Is it quantitative now? Quantitative na ba siya dahil nilagyan ko na siya ng numero? Lahat ng female, 0. Lahat ng male, 1. Ayan. Very good. Very good, students of CIIT. Napapabilib niyo ako. It's still qualitative. Correct. Bakit? O sige nga. Bakit hindi siya nagiging quantitative? Why is it not quantitative? Because it's just a code, basically, yes. It's a static fix. That is correct, Rochelle. That is the very answer. No? Because you do not perform operations with it. Correct. Tama po yan. Ang galing. John Jacob and Rochelle. Thank you so much. So someone is learning. I'm already happy with that. Okay? Because we cannot perform operation with the number that was generated, then it's not quantitative. So it's still qualitative. Very good. Ang gagaling ng CIIT students. Now, let's say for example, umalis tayo dun sa variable na sex. Let's go to the variable na color. Okay. Kunwari lahat ng kulay ng mga suot natin right now. Tapos kinode ko siya. Pwede ko bang kuhanin yung average? Can I get the average? No. Pwede bang yellow plus orange divided by 2? Yan. Pwede bang red plus purple plus sky blue divided by 3? Okay. If you're big brain. No. That's not how color works. Correct. But I'm going to be telling you, CIIT students, that I can get the average of colors. I can get the average of the colors. Only a supreme big brain can break that rule. Maybe I'm a supreme big brain. Joke. No, because we have 3 types of average. We have 3 types of averages. No? We have the mean. Ano yung tatlo? Sige nga, sinimulan ko na isa. Mean, median, and the mode. For color, anong average ang gagamitin ko? Yes, you can get the mode. So I can still get the average. Okay? The notion kasi for most people, if not all, hindi naman siguro all, kasi hindi ako kasama dun eh. The notion for most people is that when they're talking about average, they're only talking about mean. Tama ba? Yes. They're only talking about mean. Why do you think so? Why do you think? Pag sinabing average, mean na agad. It's a general knowledge. Yan, correct. Because it is the one that is often used. Kumbaga, ito yung sikat. No? Sinasabi na yan. Sinasabi na the mean is equal to average. Paano naman yung median? Magsiselos yung median dyan. Kasi median is equal average. Yung mode equals average also. Right? Out of all the 3 types, no? The mean is the most used. Ito yung pinakasikat. Kaya pag sinabi natin average, ano ang average grade mo? Ang assumption natin doon, ang ginamit para kuhanin yung para kuhanin yung average, I mean. Correct? O, pero mamaya alamin natin kung kailan lang pwedeng gamitin yung mean. Okay? When are we not using mean? When are we using mean? Okay? Sige. Let's go to the next slide. Are we clear with quantitative and qualitative, people? Mean is used for average, median, and mode. Apparently, we don't exist. That can be a meme. All right. Sige. Ayan, those are the examples no, for quantitative and qualitative variables, age, number of siblings, weight. But like what I said earlier, ano, it still depends on how you treat these variables. Next slide, ma'am. Next slide po, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, these are now the levels of measurement. After determining, nalaman na po natin yung totoong nature ng quantitative and qualitative variables. No? We've learned the true nature of quantitative and qualitative variables. It's now time to determine their level of measurement. This is very important because these levels will be the one that decides which statistic or what statistical test should be used for our research. Okay? So therefore, levels of measurement, and it's hierarchical in nature. Okay? Meaning, one is higher than the other. Excuse me. So the lowest, nilagay ko siya sa taas, no? Kasi sabi sa Bible, I don't know if you believe in the Bible, yung mga nasa ibaba ay itinataas. That's just my way, no? Nilagay ko lang siya sa taas. Okay. The nominal is the lowest level of measurement. Okay? Oh, yeah, but anyway. The nominal, it's just my way. Sorry. It's just, inilagay ko lang siya sa taas, no? But it's actually the lowest. Yun yung gusto ko lang i-point out. No? Inano ko lang siya. Kinonect. Okay? So, nominal is the lowest form or the lowest level of measurement. Ordinal is higher than nominal. Interval is higher than ordinal. And in effect, it's higher than nominal also. And ratio is the highest. Okay? Now, if your data is under nominal and ordinal, then they are qualitative variables. Kagaya ng color, zip code, sex, no, those things. So, yung mga descriptive. Okay? Kapag interval and ratio naman, they are quantitative. Okay. Ano-ano ngayon yung pagkakaiba-iba nila? Let's explore. Let's go to the next slide. When we're talking about nominal variables or the nominal level of measurement, we're only talking about variables whose data values are non-numeric group labels. So categories lang sila basically. Okay? Yung sex, nominal yan. Yung color, nominal yan. Okay? It does not reflect quantitative information. Okay? But can we assign numbers to them? Can we assign numbers to this categorical variable, to these categories? We can. We can assign, but they're not numbers for operation. Okay? Yun dapat malinaw, ha? Okay, next. Ordinal. When we're talking about ordinal level of measurement, these are variables where there is a meaningful order of categories, but there is no measurable distance between the categories. Okay, let's say for example, pag sinabi natin job, is job nominal or ordinal? Job. Ano ba yung mga job? Teacher, doctor, janitor, cashier, clerk, executive. Some says nominal, some says ordinal. Oh, so ibig sabihin, this is a debatable topic. Okay? Oo, debatable topic siya. Okay. So, hindi ko na tatanungin kung bakit ang sagot niyo ay ordinal at nominal. Okay? So, but basically, job is nominal. Bakit? We're just categorizing or we're just giving a name to whatever you are doing. Okay? Kunwari, kaya nang gagamot, di ikaw ay doktor. Kung ikaw ay nagtuturo, then you're a teacher. If you're cleaning the floor of the building or anything in the building, then you might be anong tawag sa mga janitor? Maintenance? Maintenance, again, ikaw ay maintenance, no? Kung ikaw ay staff, yan. Kung ikaw ay tumutulong sa doktor, then you're a nurse. And so on and so forth. Okay? Bakit nagiging notion na ordinal ang job? Sige nga. Can I get your opinion for this? Bakit yung iba ang notion nila ang job ay ordinal? Sometimes, because of the ranking, hindi naman natin ni-rank yung doctor, teacher, nurse, architect, engineer. Diba? So, bakit siya magiging ordinal? Ayun. Dito ngayon pumapasok yung sinasabi na kasi po mas malaki po ang sweldo ng isang CEO sa isang staff. Mas mataas po ang sweldo ng manager dun sa clerk. Correct? But are we collecting the variable salary? No. We're only getting the job. We're only collecting the variable job. Okay? Sige, I hope that's clear. Correct. Just the names of the job. Ano ang trabaho mo? Right? Hindi naman tinanong kung magkano ang salary mo. Okay? Sige. Mambalik pa rin po tayo sa nominal and ordinal. Now, how about job position? Job position. Ano na to ngayon? Ordinal or nominal? Ayan. Diyan na siya ngayon magiging ordinal kasi kunwari ikaw ay rank and file, supervisory, managerial, executive. Correct. Kasi totoo naman na nasa hierarchical yan eh, di ba? Yung sa trabaho. Kapag ikaw ay, let's say for example sa barko, kapag ikaw ay captain, natural yung mga iba ay mas mababa sa iyo. So it's a rank. So it's ordinal. Okay? Okay po ba yun sa IT students? Naintindihan yun, I think, I hope. Okay. How about educational attainment? Ano ba yung educational attainment natin? No education. Finish primary education. Finish secondary education. Finish tertiary education. Finish post-baccalaureate. Ayan, puro ordinal na ang sagot. Tama 'yon, no? Pero there are people that will treat it as nominal. Dapat po nominal 'yan. Yan yung mga sinasabi. Bakit kaya? Because they would think na ang notion is just because ba nakatapos siya ng college, dapat ba mas mataas yung rank niya sa akin? Parang yung personality na or yung pagkatao yung sinusukat. Hindi naman. Right? Ang sinusukat lang dito is the educational attainments. So let's not go over our variable. Correct. It's in the context of how it's used. No. It can be either of the two. No. Educational attainment is ordinal. Kasi we're not measuring the person, the personality, no, yung pagkatao ng isang tao through his educational attainment. Ang inaalam lang natin is ano ang natapos mo. Hindi natin sinasabi na you are better than this one just because you have a higher educational attainment. Okay? Naintindihan po yung concept ni ordinal at nominal? Ayan. Sige. Sometimes kasi most of the time, no, ito yung medyo not really knowledge, hindi knowledge. Ang tanong lang kasi, anong natapos mo? And of course, dahil hindi ka naman talaga para yung it's like stairs. You cannot finish college unless you finish secondary. And you cannot finish secondary unless you finish primary. Right? So it's just like that. It's just like standing on the stairs. Ordinal is somewhat numerical. Pwede? Oo. Somewhat numerical, but the distance between the numbers are not defined. Ayan. Kagaya ng class ranking. No? Before, meron tayong first honor, second honor, and so on. No? That's an ordinal. Okay? Kasi, yung isa rank 1, yung isa rank 2. But the distance between them is not defined. For example, ordinal is descriptive while nominal is descriptive while ordinal is somewhat numerical, but the distance is not defined. Kasi for example, your rank 1 is 95. Yung average. Yung mean. Yung mean grade niya ay 95. Tapos yung rank 2 nyo, ang mean grade niya ay 93. Does it follow that the third honor should have a mean grade of 91? Does it follow? 95 si first, 93 si second, dapat 91 si third. No. Kahit 87 lang siya. Correct? Or kahit siya ay 92. Okay? Because in an ordinal level, there are ranks, but the measure between the ranks are not defined. Understood? Okay, let's continue. Medyo mahaba-haba pa ito. Okay. Now let's go to interval and ratio. This one, I will not be exploring this or discussing this thoroughly because interval and ratio, walang masyadong issue. Okay? Because most of statistical measurements, statistical tests, require at least interval. Okay? Kunwari t-test or Pearson, at least interval ang kanyang requirement. Okay? Now, the only difference between interval and ratio is their definition of zero. Yes, Lance, that you're correct. Okay? So, for interval, the zeros are just placeholders or what we call arbitrary zeros. But for ratio, the zeros are true or absolute zero. Okay, tingnan natin. Yung grade point average nyo. I will be giving examples so that we can differentiate. No? What's the difference between the zeros of interval and the zeros of ratio? Okay. Now, if, say for example, your grade point average or the grade that you get in your card, do you think it's interval or ratio? The grade in your card, yung mga nakukuha yung mga grade, 97, 99, 81, hopefully not 75, 87. What is its level of measurement? Sige, wag muna yon. Kasi medyo trick question yun eh. Temperature muna. Ayan. Temperature. Pag sinabi natin 0 degrees Celsius, is it an absolute zero? Is it a true zero? Kapag 0 degrees Celsius, talaga bang zero? Kapag 0 degrees, wala naman talagang temperature kapag gano'n. Kasi pag ratio, pag sinabi mong zero ng ratio, yung zero ay talagang zero. Wala. Okay? Ulit ha, CIIT students. When we're talking about zero, in the ratio level, it's a true zero. Talagang wala. Okay? Pero pag interval, placeholder lamang siya. That's why it's called an arbitrary zero. Okay. Now, sa temperature, yung 0 degrees, is it an absolute or a true zero? O, marami na nag-answer ng no. Right? Bakit hindi siya absolute zero? Because kapag kinonvert ko yung 0 degrees to Fahrenheit, may measurement yan. Correct? Kapag kinonvert ko siya sa Kelvin, may measurement yan. And then other students here are explaining, we can go down below zero. So hindi talaga zero yan. Kasi may mas mababa pa sa zero eh. Are you getting the idea? Kapag wala nang mas mababa pa sa zero, then that's a ratio. Are you getting the idea of ratio and interval? Yeah, I'm glad. Okay. Sige. Alam nyo na yon. Ngayon, yung grade point average nyo or yung grade nyo sa isang subject na inilalagay sa card. Is it ratio or interval? Or you may correct yourselves if nagkamali kayo kanina. Yung grade point average, yung nilalagay nila teacher sa card, yung ini-encode nila teacher, it is an interval. Because basically, wala naman nakakakuha ng zero sa card. Tama ba? May nakakuha na ba dito ng zero sa card? Pwedeng blanco. No? Ano ba yung lowest natin ngayon sa DepEd? Are you following DepEd? Ma'am Mika, are you following DepEd's grading system? Kasi pag DepEd is 60, yes. So wala talagang zero, right? Okay. So yung grade point average po natin ay interval. Correct. Pero paano yung periodical test score nyo? Or yung quarterly test score nyo? Ayan. The quarterly test score is ratio. Kasi pag zero ka doon, talagang zero ka. Right? Yeah. Wag naman sana. Right? So, that's just only the difference between the two. No? But like what I said, wala tayong masyadong issue. There are no issues when it comes to interval and ratio variables because most, if not all, statistical tests requires at least an interval data. Okay? Sige, let's continue. If we will summarize, I hope hindi po kayo mahilo sa next slide. If we will summarize the classification of the variable, it would look like this. Okay? So, marami pa tayong hindi na-tackle, no? Na types ng mga variables like your discrete, continuous, confounding variables, extraneous variables. Was that discussed with you? Yung mga discrete and continuous? O, bibilisan ko lang. Sige, para malaman. Yeah, okay. Kapag discrete siya ay, sige nga, if it's a discrete, exact. Yan. If it's continuous, ayan, pwede may decimal. Baka sa statistics last year. Right? Okay. Oo. Well, basically, no, ang definition ng continuous is it can take any value in the infinite number line and the infinite numbers between the numbers in the number line. Did you get that? Pwede niyang makuha yung any place, any position sa positive ng number line, sa negative ng number line. Tapos pwede niya rin kuhanin yung kahit anong posisyon sa pagitan ng mga numero sa number line. So, pwedeng 1.25 and so on and so forth. Okay? So, basically, ayan, yung kagaya ng sabi nila, no, pag may decimal, ayan. Yun yung madaling definition. Pag may decimal, continuous yan. Kasi ang problema kasi, for example, sinabi mo, 1.0. Pwede namang 1. Right? So, kapag discrete, exact. Kunwari, number of students. Okay? So, hindi mo i-report na 25.0 po ang students in this class. Okay? Kasi wala namang decimal ng student. Kahit ano pa ang height niyan. Regardless of the height of this particular student. Right? Yan. Oo. Hindi porke hindi siya umabot ng 5 feet, oo, gagawin na 0.81 lang siya, ganyan, or 0.72. Ganyan, no? It's not like that. Okay? Ayan. So we also have the confounding and extraneous variables. Okay? Kapag extraneous variables, hindi ko na siya kasi nilagay kasi hindi naman talaga siya kasama. Extraneous variables are the ones that can affect your dependent variable. Okay? Maaari. No? Maaari makaapekto. For example, growth ng plants. Tapos ang variable mo na tinitignan lang ay fertilizer. Okay. Ngayon, ano-ano pa yung mga variables that may affect the growth of the plant aside from the fertilizer? Sige nga. Para malinaw tayo sa confounding at extraneous. Water, sunlight, maybe temperature, no? Maybe elevation, no? Mineral sa soil. Yan. Ngayon, yung soil, yung amount of sunlight, yung water, they are called extraneous variables. Okay? Bakit? Kasi hindi po sila kasama sa pag-aaral. They are not part of the study. So they are called extraneous variables. Okay? Now, yung extraneous variables na yan, it will become confounding. I'll be typing ha, just for the spelling. Extraneous and confounding. Okay. It will become confounding if it actually has an effect on your dependent variable. Nagiging confounding na siya. Okay? So, ganun lang yon. Anyway, so this is the summary of the variable classification. As you can see, nasa taas yung nominal, ordinal, and continuous. These are the level of measurement. And then the types of variables are in the bottom. No? Pwedeng qualitative and quantitative. As you can see, quantitative, nandoon siya sa continuous. Okay? Si quantitative nasa ordinal din. Right? Sabi ko kanina, it can be numbers, pero yung measure between the numbers is not defined. Si qualitative ay nasa nominal. Sige, baka mahilo pa kayo lalo. Let's go to the next slide, Ma'am Nika.